your emotions with how to use Dodrio. I honestly don't know how I'm going to be able to top the far-fetched easy button press, you know? I'm not going to be able to press easy button all the time. Easy button, and you cannot waste it. Anyway, looking at Dodrio's stats, it's not the worst that we've seen this generation, especially for its typing. Normal flying is really spammed by Pokemon this generation, and a lot because, you know, they just don't want to give a pure flying type away. So now we have, like, a lot of normal flying and stuff. We'll talk about the typing a bit. But on top of that, it beats out Pidgeot and Fearow. Pidgeot's an awesome Pokemon. We learned how to love with Ash's Pidgeot. We learned how to win with Bird Jesus. And then Dodrio goes and beats both of them. Dodrio has 1 point less in speed, but a lot more in attack. Like 110 base attack. That's pretty solid. So you can actually make that work with a lot of strength. On top of that, with normal flying typing, not really defensive typing, and not really an offensive typing either, that you really only have flying stab and normal stab. Not the best stab for coverage. That doesn't hit a lot super effectively. But anyway, let's hop into Pokemon Showdown. And first off, I'm going to lead with Doduo. Yep, it's a fear Pokemon. It's a feed. F-E-A-D, I think. Focus Sash, Endeavor, Quick. Doduo. Okay, anyway, so it does have the Endeavor Quick Attack combo. Focus Sash procs, Endeavor brings them down to 1 hit point. You use Quick Attack, finish them off. Doesn't work against Ghost. Watch, rinse, repeat. Let's go and look at Dodrio. We have Choice Scarf, Brave Bird. And that's kind of the best I can come up with. You go with that Adamant Nature, you have a good amount of offensive bulk at level 50. The speed is over that magical 200 mark by far. You're starting to get into very high, very outspeedy things. So Brave Bird does pack a good amount of damage, and it is a high recoil, so you do become just a really fast kamikaze kind of Pokemon. Talonflame, not plus, but Talonflame minus. You don't have the outspeed priority, you don't have the extra damage from the amount from like an item, but you are locked in with a good Brave Bird and Double Edge. You also go Choice Band and end up having less speed but more damage than Talonflame overall as well. So food for thought. On top of abilities, one of the abilities doesn't even have competitive use. On top of that, Tangled Feet is weird because you hit yourself sometimes, and when you don't hit yourself, and do hit yourself, you have slightly more evasion. And let's just go with Early Bird just in case you get put to sleep. On top of that, we have, don't worry about not run away on this one. I was thinking we have Agility, Focus Sash procs, you know, you might take a 2-strong hit, use Agility. Now your speed is off the charts at almost 600. You still have that 350 attack, we showed level 50, so that's level 100. And you do have a good amount of coverage. Flail is going to hurt. I think Flail has 180 base damage or 200 base damage when you're at 1%. Don't quote me on it, but it's incredibly high and gets stabbed. That's going to slaughter some people. Top of that, we have Drill Peck. Drill Peck, you know, just good coverage, stab, all that, and knockoff. If you see, you know, something that hits super effective and you have the chance of removing an item, might as well just carry that because you don't have any other coverage other than that. So yeah, Dodrio, I think this actually might be one of the hardest hitting Flail Focus Sash Pokemon in the game as well, as you think about it. So if you are a fan of Dodrio, can make it work. So you know, it is a fairly strong Pokemon, not the worst we've seen, but not the best Pokemon. You know, if you can make it work, please go do it. It's a good Pokemon. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. That's how you use Dodrio and apparently Doduo. Welcome back, Wolfpack. Real soon, this is how to use Gastrodon. So Gastrodon is one of my infamous OP Pokemon, and it eBayed top 10 for my best water types list, which means this Pokemon better have some goods going for it. And fortunately, its stats do back me up. That 111 hit points, that's excellent. When you get over 100 on hit points, you're dealing with a really tanky Pokemon. 82 on the special defense, really solid. That 111, 82, just absurd. And also 68 on the defense, not terrible at all, especially with the way that we have this thing comboed. Also 92 on the special attack means we have some decent offensive potential. So Gastrodon is looking to really pull through, and then it just gets better. Water ground typing. It's got that scissorness going on, but instead of 4 times weakness to fire, 4 times weakness to grass, and that's it. Also, grass isn't incredibly super common. Like, you'll definitely see it from time to time, but overall, as long as you remove your opponent's grass threat Pokemon, you're kind of in the clear. Also, great immunities and resistances. You need electric, and then resistance to poison, steel, fire, and rock. This means that Gastrodon is going to be a great Pokemon for fairy types. Like, if you have fairy type on your team, just switch into Gastrodon whenever you feel super effective coming, and you're going to be okay. A lot of neutral hits, great for a tanky Pokemon. It's just get rid of the grass, worry about that, and then everything is going to be excellent. Hopping into Pokemon Showdown, Gastrodon is a really awesome Pokemon, and it does have a lot of diversity. That much like its shape, it seems like you can mold it into whatever your team needs or whatever your playstyle is, and that's what makes it so awesome. So mostly it's just going to be stockpile recover. Stockpile, in my opinion, one of the best moves in the game. Free defense and special defense boost. You only get to use it 3 times, but generally that's all you're going to need, especially with a tanky Pokemon like Gastrodon. And it means that if your opponent's like trying to switch into a different kind of attacker to gain advantage, as long as it isn't a grass type attack, you're going to be very tanky and very frustrating to knock out, which is why I want to run with Citrus Berry. Now some people use leftovers. Leftovers is fine, but I like Citrus Berry because it makes it to where your setup is a lot more reliable. That when you have effectively 125% hit points, it means stockpile, then you recover because that Citrus Berry proc. So it means you don't have to force any early recovers, you get tankier quicker, and with a bit more reliability. So that's pretty awesome right there. Now we talk about the plug and play. You can kind of do whatever. You can make it to where do you want to be more defensively bulky, so you can just either make it really split, that we have a little more in special defense because its nature is higher, or do you just kind of really balance out the stats. You're generally going to see more physical hits in the game, so you might want to have more defense. And also grass types are just more likely to be special attacks, so you might as well just kind of sacrifice off the special attack. Make it where your special defense still eats like Psychic, Shadow Balls, just other neutral special attacks, but where you're not anticipating surviving any kind of grass type move whatsoever, because you've already had Pokemon on your team to deal with their grass type threat. Other than that, you just throw in the defense and then hit points. Now your super bulky Pokemon is going to be frustrating, infuriating to deal with for your opponent, and that's why you just get more and more infuriating because you can throw out Toxic. Alright, you Toxic, you recover up all their damage, they can't touch you, and then you have Ice Beam for the extra coverage. This is a very awesome Gastrodon set that they have flying types, dragon types, anything weak to Ice Beam. You can just kind of come in, clean up the damage after the Toxic, and it gets pretty strong. Toxic isn't your style, go with Scald. Scald makes it where you get that burn on your opponent, so you use Scald until you get burned. Ice Beam to finish off the damage, whatever coverage is optimal at that time, and that's going to be just like super crazy right there. And even then, let's go back to Toxic real quick. You go Toxic Infestation. I talked about this combo before, that Gastrodon isn't going anywhere. You set up the Infestation, you use Toxic, now they're badly poisoned, and they're locked in for a couple turns, so they're just so much damage. If they don't have any sustain, Infestation Toxic burns them down at the end of the turn, and that's a knockout right there, while you're just sitting there trolling with those recovers and just kind of waiting until your opponent just goes away. So that can be super strong. And the last one I had is Scald and Clear Smog. Now it also gets Clear Smog. So if we're gonna have 2 free stockpiles, your opponent's like, I'm a Sword Stance. You just Clear Smog them. Exterminate Slash or any kind of steel type Pokemon because they are immune. But they bring a Talonflame, a Garchomp that's trying to go like, hey, I'm just gonna go and I'm going for just a +4, +6, and not knocking you out. You surprise them with a Clear Smog, hit them with the Scald as they try to set up again, and you're just gonna have the damage advantage in every situation, as well as the tanky advantage. So Scald, Clear Smog, very powerful as well. So Gastrodon, a lot of diversity. Do you want the aggro? Do you want the status clear? Do you want the toxic, just infestation, burn down? It all works out really well in the end. Now one interesting thing is Eviol like Shellos. This is probably one of the funniest coincidences and one of the most interesting interactions between 2 Pokemon. So 48-62 with 78 on hit point, or 76 on hit points, 111-68-82. Now the defenses break down to where Shellos is just as tanky as Gastrodon, if not ever so slightly more tanky. So if we look at it, Woodhammer, 100%. Now I did change Gastrodon to just a pure water type Pokemon, but 100.4% of itself on max damage. So if you look at these max damage ranges, Shellos takes slightly less damage, anywhere from 0.1 to like 0.8% less of its health, but it's also just taking less damage in general, 302 to 356, compared to 362 to 428. So you're losing on Citrus Berry, you're losing on leftovers, you're losing on that sustain, you're just straight up taking less damage. Now you don't have as much of a hit point pool, but if we use math and we think about things like that, it means since we have sustain and we're not losing all of our hit points at once, we're just going to be tankier overall, and we also are only weak to 2 things 2 times effective instead of 1 thing 4 times effective. So when fully set up, we can see an electric type hit and still survive. We can see a grass type hit and still survive instead of fearing that almighty grass power the entire time. Now Shellos doesn't have the offensive prowess of Gastrodon. So it's mostly just gonna be Toxic Infestation, Rest, and all that. And really the only thing you have to worry about is other kind of shutdown phase on stupid things like that, or other Toxic. That since this isn't a rest set, it's going to be kind of tricky to get rid of Toxic and Burn, so that could be a problem for you. But if your opponent isn't bringing any hard status, then you just move with Shellos, and that could be pretty interesting. Now, one thing worth mentioning is this set in singles is also very, very devastating. You have Sustain and ridiculous coverage. Ice, that's good, and then Ground and Water for Stab. That means you can actually take a couple points off of your special attack, put in your hit points, make sure you get a little bit more tankiness, and now you're going to be very difficult to two-shot. So you deal in Earth Power, you deal in Ice Beam, you recover back up, and then you just keep going for the damage rotation, which is why I honestly feel Bright Powder gets a super amount of use right here, because it makes it where your opponent effectively has 90% accuracy using a base 100 move, so somewhere around 10% chance to miss, depending on whatever they're doing. And this means that, you know, if you're in Recover War, you're trying to trade, like, you know, two-shotting. With this, you have a lot of two-hit KO potential, especially with the coverage, and maybe even some one-hit KO potential. So if they miss an attack and you're tanky, it's going to make them lose a lot of ground that is really effective compared to that 10% chance. Sure, it doesn't activate that often, but you're going to be around to at least see it happen once. And if it does, that can be game-changing right there. Like compared to a Leftovers, you know, you might get small amounts of health back, but if you get an early Bright Powder miss, that's a lot more useful than anything. Same with Citrus Berry. You're not trying to set up or anything, so Citrus Berry isn't going to help you in as many situations as the Bright Powder. This is honestly where it's at, and this is where how you make a frustrating Pokemon that brings the most power that it can. Now in doubles, we can just run like max special attack, go with the Modest Nature, get the most damage out of it, and then also just kind of split the defenses, and that means we're going to be tankier than if we went 252-0-0. We're actually going to be slightly less tanky than if we went 128-128. That's because of the base stat gain. Now, if you look here, going from 172 to 204 is kind of going to be more of a percent boost than just whatever you get out of your hit points, because the base stats are lower, but EVs are consistent. So you get much more exponential scaling compared to the linearness of the base stats, and that's kind of how it works. So even more math for the Gastrodon shenanigans. With this, you're going to be modest, you're going to be tanky, slap on Citrus Berry as well, and Storm Drain has a lot of combo potential. You draw in Scald, so you can switch in Gastrodon if you feel your Mega Kangaskhan or your Pokemon that's weak against Scald. Or whatever Pokemon doesn't want to get burned by Scald comes in, you know, Suicune. You just absorb that Scald off the Suicune, you gain special attacks, and then Gastrodon has great coverage. So we have Recover. So now we're still frustratingly tanky. We have Citrus Berry, it's a lot of really just pain that your opponent has to deal with. We get Earth Power, great stab. We have Clear Smog, so we get rid of your opponent's setup, and then we have Scald for even more stab, or if we want the Dragon Killing, Ice Beam. Any combo of those moves is going to be excellent, and then you can just really just have that Storm Drain. Also, you have Pokemon side of the field using Surf. You Surf, Gastrodon gets a boost, still tanky as all heck, and then you just kind of hit everything and do damage, and cool things happen, and then you win. So that's Gastrodon. A lot of really good diversity. That's why I put it on top 10. I've used it many times before, so I know the ins and outs of Pokemon really well. If it gets that set up, or if it gets that shut down, just utterly destructive. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please use Gastrodon, and I hope you all have a nice day. Welcome back, Wolfpack Velos here. We're taking a trip from Kalos to Hoenn, and we're bringing Aurorus with us, and Aurorus just got released with its hidden ability, Snow Warning, so that can only mean good things. Also, when we look at some Mega Reading off the Sapphire move tutors, does get some nice little upgrades, like Hyper Voice and Earth Power, as well as Stealth Rock. Now, there is one problem with Aurorus. Well, that actually doesn't do anything I highlighted, but all those weaknesses are not a good thing for such a slow Pokemon to have. This is actually kind of nifty right here. We can see its speed, 58, we can also see a 4 times weakness to fighting, 4 times weakness to steel, grass, water, rock, and ground weaknesses. A lot of this is fairly common, so that's going to make it very difficult for Aurorus to do much, because it's weird. When you look at high defense, high special defense, very high hit points, it wants to be a tanky Pokemon. At the same time, it's also very susceptible to getting blown up. Now, it's another Pokemon with Snow Warning, which means you can incorporate on the Hail teams, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Then we look at a Abomasnow. You know, Abomasnow has Mega, it's also regular Pokemon. Regular Abomasnow has roughly the same, like, offensive stats, and then Mega Abomasnow, you know, it's a really tanky Pokemon as well when you look at it. 105 defense, 105 special defense, 90 hit points, but overall, all the Snow Warning Pokemon, pretty much just these two, they have really bad typings. Like, they're very susceptible to a lot of things because Ice kind of has a lot of weaknesses, so we're just gonna have to work with what we can. Looking at what Aurorus can do, one of the main set ideas is just Rock Polish. Hope that you don't get immediately blown up by any kind of super effective hit, and then use your Refrigerate ability on a standard set just to kind of make it work out. That in singles, this is kind of going to be your best bet with Life Orb, and I like the way that the speed works up here, that with 196 EVs into speed with a Modest Nature, after you Rock Polish, you're now ready to outspeed 135 base speed Pokemon. You have a good amount of special attack, and then you can throw out a Hyper Voice. Hyper Voice is going to get Refrigerate, so normal type becomes Ice type, gets 30%, then gets Stab, then gets Life Orb, and now we're looking at a threatening hit. I just put the rest of the EVs into hit points, that way you can try to just to survive everything. Now if you do want to kind of cater a bit, you can put it more into defense, and it's going to make you more defensively bulky than if you just put them into hit points. So it's kind of like, what are you going to try to hope that you survive, and then you just kind of see what happens, and maybe you'll start to get a sweep off. Freeze Dry is a really nice move as well, going to be Ice, going to get Stab, and it's a super effective hit on water type Pokemon. So between Freeze Dry, Hyper Voice, and Earth Power, you have excellent coverage. That Earth Power was something Aurorus needed, but didn't know it needed. That getting ground type coverage just kind of helps out in a lot of ways, and it's good to go from there. So we just kind of look at the other things. I was thinking that for a quick little gimmick set, we can also look at Round, Choice Specs, Refrigerate, and Double Battles. We put it next to a Pokemon like Porygon Z. Porygon Z can Scarf, throw out an adaptability Round with like a ridiculous amount of speed and special attack on a Modest Nature, and then Aurorus will be able to use Round. Power doubles if others use Round this turn. So Round is going to double in power, get the Refrigerate boost, become an Ice type, get Stab, go into Choice Specs, and then just hopefully destroy 2 Pokemon. Like Porygon Z knocks out a Pokemon, and then Aurorus cleans up another Pokemon. And the cool thing about Round is it's going to follow the last Pokemon to use Round on your team, like Porygon Z. So that's like a quick little gimmick. But now we need to talk about what Aurorus seriously gets. Snow Warning. Now we're talking about Aurorus with Snow Warning. It's going to be Double Battles. It's going to be a Hail Team Pokemon, and I do like it because you can kind of run the same thing with a Focus Sash. You know, Rock Polish, you try to get all those outspeeds, and then you just try to throw as strong of damage out there as possible. But this time you have supportive Pokemon. And another cool thing about Aurorus, like Aurorus is a really cool Pokemon, except for like the typing just keeping it down. So it has Discharge, it gets Thunderbolt. So you have like electric coverage, which is really nice, and you can also have Blizzard. For those of you who don't know, Blizzard has 100% accuracy in Hail. So now you have a very powerful move. I like it over Hyper Voice because it just has a little less damage, but that chance to freeze, and it just synergizes with the Hail really well. Now Aurorus does bring a little bit of interesting things to Snow Warning because of Earth Power. That since Ice is going to be well resisted by like Steel type Pokemon, you just gotta throw out the Earth Power and kind of blow them up, which means you can have a Scarf Pokemon using Blizzard, you can have high damage support with Blizzard or some kind of other varied attack, and it's going to combat really nice. Also, there are some abilities that work in Hail, like Ice Body and Snow Cloak. So it doesn't have like the greatest variety, but I mean you do get a high damage move that hits both opponents in doubles. Can't really complain, and you can coverage out from there. You know, Glaceon does really well. So Hail is a bit unsupported, but Aurorus does make it a bit more useful if it doesn't get immediately blown up by super effective hits. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and that's how you use Aurorus and Omega Ruby off the Sapphire. Hope you all have a nice day. Welcome back, Wolfpack Velos here, and this is how to use Cloyster. Look at Cloyster stats. This is probably like the craziest stat discrepancies I've ever seen. That the defense is one of the highest in the game, but then special defense is also one of the lowest. It has a crazy duality, but what else do you expect with a Pokemon that's made from a shell? But if you look at hit points, the hit points are really low too, so it does take away its overall tankiness. Then it also has a decent amount of attack and special attack, while having a lower end on the speed. So it has all colors of the rainbow on this setup, but not really. If we look at its typing, we have Water Ice. Again, so Water Ice, you know, interesting typing, not really too defensive though. It only really resists itself, and with the Fighting Rock weaknesses, you're going to be weak against your strongest stat because Fighting Rock generally are mostly physical. And then you have Blast and Electric, but whenever you get hit by special attack, it's pretty much nights out for Cloyster. So we have to take all of this into consideration when hopping into Pokemon Showdown and coming up with a strategy. And pretty much the thing that people run the most is Focus Sash, Shell Smash. You want to kind of guarantee getting that Shell Smash off. You want to make sure that you just can set up, and then you're going to be one of the fastest things on the field, and you're going to be one of the hardest hitting Pokemon in the game. Just one turn set up like that. Shell Smash, very strong move, and it has many uses that can work. Some Pokemon make better use of it than others, and we're looking at Cloyster for this one. So what I was thinking is Icicle Spear. That's kind of the go-to right here. Icicle Spear is going to have stab, and it's going to hit 5 times. It says hits 2 to 5 times, but with the ability Skill Link, it hits always the maximum number of times. So you're going to be hitting 25 times 5 with stab, 125 base power with stab, and if we look at its attack, that's going to be 320 attack at level 50, over 600 attack at level 100. And then we look at the speed. Even though it has a really low speed without any investment, we're doubling that. So that's putting us over 240 speed at level 50 and over 400 speed. 400, over 450, getting close to 480 speed at level 100. That's a lot of damage right there. So what I was also thinking is going with that naughty nature. You do run the risk of being physically walled with Icicle Spear and Rock Blast, and you can just kind of use your Water Stab to get a good hit off of Surf or Hydro Pump. I just personally do not like the moves that have lower than 90% accuracy, so I can see Surf being a strong option, and it's just a really good move. But with Rock Blast as well, it's going to hit multiple times, and you're going to have an incredible amount of coverage. There are also a couple other ways to run Cloyster that you can make it a pretty reliable rapid spin Pokemon that can set up spikes and toxic spikes. Essentially, if your opponent's trying to set up, you can do it as well, and it can really kind of create some good advantage for you. As long as you don't get hit by anything super effective or anything special. Even though it's kind of like a crazy list, sometimes you can just encounter those things, and you have a very safe setup. I was thinking Citrus Berry for the burst health, and when you look at it, go with the Impish nature, and then put the rest in special defense and hit points, and you'll still have some really good tankiness overall that gives you like the setup that you would like to have. On top of that, you can also run a Shell Smash King's Rock. Now this is a bit risky because you do run the risk of like getting just one hit KO as you're trying to make yourself vulnerable for Shell Smash. But if it goes off, King's Rock is awesome with Skill Link. That it's a 10% chance to flinch on each hit, so you're hitting 5 times, 50% chance to flinch your opponent while doing absurd amounts of damage from the Rock Blast, from the Icicle Spear, from the Hydro Pump. Also, ignore this, I didn't want the adamant. It's naughty nature again because you are running that one special attack, and you're kind of really frail overall. So if you can find a good opportunity, like you can predict your opponent switching or setting up, that's when you can get this Cloyster to really work wonders. So King's Rock is going to be insane as well if you're just losing out on that Focus Sash. But King's Rock is a little better because with Focus Sash, that gets broken if your opponent has any entry hazards, or if they do have priority to a degree. So all you have to really do is when your Cloyster is worried about the priority and any kind of stealth rock or spike setup that they have. But if you can get around that or set up Cloyster before they set that up, you're looking at a lot of strength. Alright, and one more set for Cloyster on this one. I was thinking Ultimate Stat Tank. So this one, I'm kind of hitting the easy button, but not really. It's still going to be Baton Pass, and if you think about it, Espeon is reliable Baton Pass Pokemon, and it can get a lot of Calm Minds in. So the idea is you use Espeon, set up some Calm Mind. Baton Pass and Cloyster, they have an incredibly high amount of natural defense. You're getting a lot of special defense and a bit of special attack to make it work on your side. So that still makes you just a good setup Pokemon that can kind of burn your opponent down. Depending on how many Calm Minds you're planning on getting, you can run this set a couple different ways. I was thinking Chesto Resto because you're looking at having over 400 in both defense and special defense if it goes right. Even with the 300 hit points being a bit low, you can make it work and you can get a lot of rest off. On top of that, this gives you ample opportunity to set up 3 spikes, a lot of damage with Ice Beam and Brine. And why I was thinking Brine is because this move doesn't really get a lot of publicity, but I think it's a perfect move for this situation. If you only get 2 boosts in the special attack, you don't have a crazy high amount of special attack, but you might be able to get your opponent down to half with 1 hit. With that next one, Brine is just going to do extra damage and take them out. That's also another good combo with spikes. Now with spikes, they're already taking a good chunk of their health, and they're just easier to bring below half, which means Brine's going to do a lot of extra damage. Ice Beam for coverage, and if you don't want to set up spikes, you can also still run Toxic, and then you can Toxic Stall while doing a little extra chip damage with the Brine and Ice Beam, and still resting off very, very comfortably. So you can also play around with the stats a bit if you want to. Let's also make this level 50 so we can get some other number ideas coming in. So with this, you can drop it down and get the most out of that little extra defense since your special defense is being boosted so high. So if you guys enjoyed the video, that's how you use Cloyster. Welcome back, Wolfpack. Rollers here. We're taking a trip from Kalos to Hoenn, and we're bringing Cloyster with us. Cloyster doesn't really get too much in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire from Noob Tutors, so this is going to be a standard Cloyster set video, and that's kind of one thing about Kalos to Hoenn, just updating sets, and sometimes they might be really awesome. So what we have here is we have the option to get Dragon Pulse from your move tier if you want to spin VP instead of Heart Scale. I don't know, we also have Icy Wind and Helping Hand. Now Helping Hand is a decent option because Cloyster can be running doubles, and Icy Wind is also good for that speed support. So it's pretty standard stuff. Like a lot of Pokemon want to get Icy Wind or Electro Web and Helping Hand, so we're not getting like anything amazing that really breaks this Pokemon, but we are still getting a really good potential to like at least transition this Pokemon to doubles. Now first off, if you want to run Cloyster in singles, a lot of people they just go Health Bulk. You're going to just try to endure as many hits as possible, and then you throw out a Mega Launcher, huge, most likely super effective attack, and you try to sweep it from there with the Choice Specs. It's going to be very similar to Dragalge in this kind of way that you endure the hit, you throw out a KO, and then you switch out, and then you wait for better times, and then you just kind of go and keep turning it into some extra win and KOs and stuff. Because between all this, you have a very, very diverse coverage, and it's just even further boosted by Mega Launcher. Mega Launcher makes Pulse moves have 50% more power, and that's actually really crazy because moves like Dark Pulse Choice Specs into a super effective hit, that's going to KO. Same with Aura Sphere. Now I just like having Ice Beam because hitting Dragon types and Flying types is really cool, and Scald, you can like there's kind of like a little bit of choice here that because the base power of Water Pulse is so low, if I could actually spell water, so Water Pulse only has that 60 base power, which means it's getting boosted to 90 compared to just Scald's 80. So it's kind of like, do you like the Scald burn? You're still getting stab, you're still getting Choice Specs boost, but do you want a little bit of extra base damage between the stab and Choice Specs? It's going to help you out with some neutral hits, or just going to go for Scald and like, hey, I might want the burn, I might not knock out the Pokemon, or you can just with this you're actually like locking yourself in Choice Specs. Just keep throwing out Scald. Maybe turn Scald into a 2 KO Pokemon. Potentially you can like lower one of their physical offensive Pokemon, and you just have a couple of good options with this. That's going to be the main way that you want to run Cloyster for singles. But you can also look at it from that doubles perspective. Now that we have Icy Wind, you can kind of start looking for those outspeed. You can just be a tanky, huge support Pokemon. Because one of the cool things about Mega Launcher is that Heal Pulse is affected by it, which means that's going to heal the target for 75% of its hit points. And not just like that with the speed support. That seeing we go full tank, Bull Nature, high amount of defense, kind of really high amount of special defense, getting some huge hit point investment in there, and then just throw out the Icy Winds. And eventually your opponent is going to be slower than your main Pokemon. Your main Pokemon's going to be taking damage. You're throwing out the Heal Pulse. They're getting almost all of their health back, and your opponent's just going to have bad time. You also have Scald for that burn support and Protect to kind of soak up hits and have leftovers proc. And Cloyster can be kind of threatening like this. With that huge level of heal, it just kind of gets really absurd. And then we can kind of look at a couple of other things. I was thinking with a really cheese single set, we have Endure. Then any Pokemon gets Endure, you can always set that up into a Salac Berry, Potato Berry, or some kind of berry setup. And I think that's really cool that since Cloyster is really tanky, you can actually throw out a hit, get some damage in there, Endure, have Salac Berry proc, and then you can throw out another hit, and then it's going to be most likely KO right there. Now you have that speed party on your side. Again, Scald or Water Pulse, whatever you feel like using, Ice Beam and Aura Sphere. So now you're just looking for coverage. If that coverage lands, you might be able to score that KO while under that speed party. And since you have a lot of base tankiness, it's going to work out really well in your favor. That if you max out the speed, so you just go into that, you're not going to have the highest outspeeds. I wanted to like preserve a lot of modest, so that way we get the highest amount of special attack possible since we're already boosting our speed. And you're still going to find a decent amount of outspeeds, and that's all you're looking for. You're not looking to be the fastest, hardest hitting sweeper. You're just going to try to clean up some of your opponent's Pokemon. If you bring this into the mid to late game and everything's already around half health, you can just kind of pick off opponent's Pokemon very surprisingly, and then follow through with the rest of the game from there. So I think that's one cool thing that Cloyster can do. And then the rest of these sets are pretty fun as well. So if you guys enjoyed this video, and that's how you use Cloyster in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire.
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Jake from State Farm, everybody.
Ready for a spooky glam makeover? Glamnetics Beetlejuice Collection has arrived.